this is what our dashboard kind of looks like. Some of the problems that we typically face is that we do support on multiple channels, whether it's Discord, whether it's email, whether it's intercom, and really, email is the slowest one because Discord is really easy for all of our team members to come together and help the community out. But sharing an inbox is not easy, and that's why you have tons of tools like Freshdesk and Desk also. So we thought, why can't we build something really simple, a nice simple tool that will allow us to take all of the emails inside an inbox and just assign it to us, team members, and allow them to also just reply right from the tool itself, right? So this is what the tool could probably look like. Right now, this tool is connected to my inbox. Sorry, it's actually connected to Akshay's inbox. And as you can see, Akshay has received a couple of welcome emails that you'll receive from me if you sign up on AppSmith. And Akshay will now also be able to kind of like filter all of these emails by the ones that are unassigned, as well as the ones, let's say, that are assigned directly to me over here. And also we can change the assignment status. So for example, if I want to change the status of this ticket, let's say I want to assign it to Akshay, I can very easily do that right over here. As you can see, instantly the ticket was updated and assigned to him. And if I look at the tickets assigned to me anymore, none of them are there, right? Really easy. Similarly, you can also just go through the emails that are there, because it's an entire email thread and not just a single email. And you can go ahead and reply to one of the users, to one of the emails as well. So you can say, help you over a Zoom call. And sending this immediately sends an email to the user. So this is a really simple support workflow. It would probably take quite a while to integrate, especially with the Gmail APIs, but I'm going to show you how we quickly build this today. So to begin, let's start by having a look at our application. What we really want to do first is begin to fetch all of the threads that are there inside our inbox. So we can create a new API for that, and let's call it fetch inbox. And we've already connected to the Gmail API over here. And what we've done to do this is to edit this as a data source. So clicking edit data source here will take you to this flow. And in this flow, you can configure your entire data source for authentication. So as you can see, the URL is Gmail Google APIs. The authentication type is OAuth2. And here under the authentication section, what we've done is we've set the grant type to the auth code, because we are looking for an authorization code type of grant, not a client credential one. We've also decided to add the authorization to the headers and not to the request URL, and also to prefix a bearer to the access token, because the authorization header requires a bearer prefix. Similarly, the access token URL, the client ID and client secret all come from Gmail's configuration, and you can find these details inside your Google Cloud project. So once you create a Google Cloud project and grant it access, you will automatically be able to see these values. Our client secrets are all encrypted and are not returned to the client once they are saved. So as you can see that the field is empty right now. So even if you save your credentials once, you can be sure that nobody else from your team or anybody that you share your app with will ever gain access to these client secrets. Similarly, the scopes that Gmail requires are the gmail.modify scope, and the authorization URL is the Google Auth URL here. One thing to be mindful of is to specify this redirect URL inside your Google project. So this is really important because Google will block any type of domain URL that is not specifically authorized by you. So because this is AppSmith Cloud, you need to copy this URL and add it as an accepted redirect URL inside your Google project. Similarly, you have to add certain additional parameters, such as the prompt type for consent and the access type as offline. Now, the access type offline, what it allows us to do is to generate a refresh token and not only an access token. So the refresh token ensures that it's a long-lived connection, and whenever the access token expires, the AppSmith backend is automatically able to refresh the data. Once you hit save and authorize, it'll ask you to authenticate with your account, and that's it. You'll have the access token and be able to talk to the Gmail APIs. So now let's just go back to our API for a moment. We'd like to fetch all of the threads that are there in our inbox, and we can make use of this method that Gmail has. Sorry, this is the get thread method. We want to use the list thread method. So we're going to copy this over here into our API pane. And the user ID we can use is me, because I'm trying to fetch the data from my inbox. And it takes in certain additional query parameters, such as the max results, which let's return 5 for now. And it also takes in a query parameter that we can filter by. So for example, we can say, I think it's a from list. Yeah. So we can filter it by emails sent by a particular person. So here, let's filter it by from nikhil@appsmith.com. So what we generally do internally is we have a common email ID like support@appsmith.com, so that all emails come to that one email ID and they get redirected to others. So as long as the originating email is the same, you can filter by it. You can also use different filter conditions like putting them under a common group, as well as assigning labels to them. But this is the one I'm going to choose for today. So running this actually fetches all of the threads inside my inbox. And now to display these threads, I'm going to make use of our list widget. So let's drag the list here. And as we can see, this list shows all of the different Pokemons. And this is some kind of hard-coded data that the platform is showing you today. But we can easily get the data from our API and display that over here as well. So we're going to use a little JavaScript for that. So opening curly braces allows us to access all the variables in the application. And now I can say fetch inbox.data.threads. So if you notice, our response was a little nested. It contained a separate thread object underneath the top level object, which is why I accessed the data of the fetch inbox API and then the threads object underneath that. And the threads object is an array, and the array is what the list expects over here in this case. If I had only specified the data field, you'd see that there would be a transformation error over here. So threads is what we really want. Now let's also customize our each individual item of a list. And this is really the special property of the list, which is that it's a repeater widget and it can be customized any way that you'd like. So for example, we'd like to show the ticket ID on the top left corner. So let's specify the ID over here. And let's add a prefix to the ticket ID. And similarly, I probably also want to show a snippet just the way that Gmail does. So let's add the snippet as well. And the snippet gets added right over here. And just like that, you can add a variety of any widgets inside the list widget. Today, we don't support widgets such as the dropdown or the input field widget, but that's going to come out in the next release. So now that we have all of the inbox threads showing up, we also want to drill down into these threads because one thread might have multiple emails behind it. To display these emails, let's make use of a rich text editor. The emails typically returned by Gmail are in an HTML format, so the rich text editor can actually help us display that really well because it takes in a HTML right here. I'm also going to disable it because I don't want any kind of input to happen. I only want it to be used as a display mechanism. Now we only have the top level data of each thread. So we need to call a separate API for each of these threads to get the details. Let's go ahead and call the thread get API. So this is the API to get threads. Let's create a new API here to do that. So let's call this the fetch emails. And we'll use the Google API again. Yeah. And the user ID is me. And now the thread ID, we want to get it from the thread that is selected. So let's use the mustache to talk to the list widget, and let's talk to the list selected item property. As well, the selected item has an ID field, so we'll make use of that. The ID is the thread ID in this case. So what we're really doing is connecting the thread ID over here to the second API to fetch all the emails for this thread to kind of make it contextual. And running this fetches us all of our data. Now, having a look at this data, it's quite long and quite nested over here. So we're going to have to massage it to kind of show it correctly inside our rich text editor. So because I know that it's going to be a little complicated in terms of JavaScript, I'm going to create a function out of this. So let's create a function so that we can write multi-line code. And inside this function, I'm going to access the fetch emails data. And emails have multiple messages. So each message is actually one email. So I'm going to map over all of these messages. And over here, simply returning the messages, unfortunately, won't be enough. So let's say I just return message. I know this should be a return type here. Now, as you can see, all of this data is quite garbled right now. It's quite nested. But the evaluated value helps us with that because it tells us exactly what data is underneath. And here we can look at the payload part of it. So the payload contains different parts, and the parts internally contain different MIME types and body fields. So that's what we really want. So we have to nest down towards the payload and then towards the parts. So let's fetch the message.payload.parts. And if you'll have a look at the first part is always the text plain, and the second part is always the HTML content. So Gmail provides both options, but we want to display the HTML content. So we're just going to take the second parts of one, right? And underneath that, we can see that there's a body field which contains some data. So let's say .body.data. So that's it. We're able to get the parts bodies data. That's great. Now, you'll also notice that unfortunately, this data right now, it's really a base 64 URL, and that's because it's encoded. So we need to add a little bit of logic to make sure that this gets decoded to the right format that we want. So to do this, I'm going to copy a small snippet that helps us replace this data. And we're also going to use the ATOB function to decode this over here. Awesome. So we're able to actually get some decoded data now. The second thing we can notice is that because it's an array, it's showing us the data in array format. But this can easily be solved by just running a join on top of the data. So let's join this with, let's say, a /n. And there we go. We're able to see some data right over here. Right? Awesome. The next thing we want to do, now that we have our entire inbox in front of us, is we want to add some logic to this inbox that Gmail doesn't provide. We want to be able to assign some of these emails to particular users, and we want to be able to filter these emails, right? To do that, we're going to use our Postgres database. So we're going to create a new query here. And as you can see, I already have a few databases connected, but you can also create your own database over here. Creating a database is fairly simple. You just need to fill in all of these fields in terms of the connection mode, the host address, port, database name, and your authentication credentials. As always, credentials are encrypted and safe. Don't forget to whitelist the IP of our cloud instance if you're building on AppSmith Cloud, or if you've self-hosted your AppSmith instance, ensure that your database has access to that instance by whitelisting it. Since I've already created a database, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a query for it. So let's call this fetch tickets. And over here, we can see the entire structure of our database. So if you look at the support email field, table, we can see the different columns. It has an ID, assignee, and a state column. So let's go and fetch that. So let's fetch from support underscore email. And let's order it by the ID. And we can limit it to 100. Great. So we also have some data in terms of the assignments in our database, and we can pull that right over here. Now, what we want to do is we want to join this data because we have emails from Gmail and we have support tickets that are assigned based on these emails. And they're both connected by the ID field. So the ID field is the uniform connector, which connects the ID of Gmail to the ID inside the database. And also it has an assignment on top of that. So to perform this join, we can do that in memory inside AppSmith itself. So inside our list widget, let's go ahead and convert this also to a function. And inside this function, we can still make use of the fetch inbox.data.threads. Let's map over it. And let's spread a thread here. So what this, again, I can also return this right now. So what this does right now is it creates a mapper function on top of our threads data so that we can inject some of the assigned user information from our database into this. So we can create a new field called, let's say, the assigned field. And for the assigned, we can actually look through, let's say, our tickets. So our tickets were what we fetched from our database. and we're going to iterate over the tickets data to go ahead and find a ticket which has the same thread ID as the one that's currently under mapping. So this is a ticket here. And let's return a ticket where the ID is equal to the ID of the thread.id.
That makes sense. Yeah. So abhi ye wala bhi, like, it came through a contact of mine.
All right. Cool. Let me just have a look. We might have missed something. So the signed tickets. If I return the, oh, it's not the ticket ID. It is the ticket ID. This doesn't have to be here. Okay, I'm just going to copy this from our list widget. I might have made a small JS error there.
Nikhil, somebody mentioned that you're missing a comma after the thread.
After the thread? Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. That was a great catch. All right, yeah. So that kind of did it. That gave us the assigned data as well over here. So we can see that there is an assignee over here, and we probably want to display this data right now. So let's go ahead and drag a text widget, and inside the text we can start using the current item. So the current item is really the it refers to the current data item for this view. So because the list widget is a repeater widget, it's able to access pretty much every data item that's given in the array. So the current item references to the item that is mapped to this view. So saying current item dot let's say assign, and assigned is not there for everything. So we can say if it's there, then let's use the current item dot assigned dot assignee. Otherwise, we can just leave it as empty, for example, right? So as we can see that some of our list items over here have their assigned values while some don't, and that's perfectly fine. We can have a look at this data clearly. Awesome. The next thing you want to do is add a set of filters and be able to update these assignees. So let's make use of a dropdown for that. So I'm going to add a few assignees. I'll add myself. I'll also go ahead and add Akshay over here. And what we can do is on option change of this, we can go ahead and insert a new assignee inside the database. So let's go ahead and create a new database query. Let's call this assign ticket. And we can do a create over here. So let's insert into our support underscore email. And support email has an ID field. It has an assignee field. And the values for these, we can take the ID from the list. So we can take it from the selected items ID. And the assignee, we can take it from the dropdown. So we can take the dropdown selected option value over here. And we don't need this. Awesome. So this will help us kind of assign all of the items into the database. But we probably also want to update assignees. So we can also add like an on conflict for this. So we can say insert into so and so. We can add an on conflict on constraint. I forget the constraint over here. Let's have a look at that. This is support email PK. So support email PK, and then on constraint on conflict of that, we can go ahead and update the table. Let's set the assignee is equal to the new dropdown. Great. And the other thing that you'll notice in AppSmith is that while I was writing this code, you can actually see the evaluated value of the code that's going to be executed. So there are really no surprises. You can see that this is exactly the value that's going to get inserted into the field, as well as this is the value that's going to get updated. And you'll also notice that the assignee value is right now empty. So it's good that we caught that. We can go ahead and also add a default assignee to this. So let's take the default assignee from the list. So we can talk to the list selected item and fetch the data from the assigned dot assignee, right? And right now, because this item doesn't really have an assignee, we can try and let's say assign it over here. Okay, there was an error with our insert. Let's have a look. So we're inserting on conflict. There was an error on ID. Where ID to okay, this seems all right. No, there still seems to be an error somewhere. Okay, let's just take this from here and update set assign. Okay, great. We're able to update the rows over here. So updating this right over here. Okay, we also need to go ahead and refetch all of the emails so that gets reflected inside our views. So let's do that. Yeah, and there we're able to update the views in real time. So AppSynth is really reactive in that way. As soon as you fetch the data from your backend, and as long as they're bound to the right views, you'll automatically see that data show up for you. Now, similarly, we probably also want to add a filter on top of all of these emails. So let's create a filter here. I can have a simple filter for all. Let's have a filter for unassigned and a filter, let's just say for assigned to me. The default can be all. All right. So now on triggering this filter, we probably want to also filter all of this in real time. Now, it would be great if Gmail supported this, but unfortunately, Gmail doesn't in a lot of cases. So what you can really do in some of these cases is you can write the filtering on the client side itself. So on top of this, we can store this data. For example, let's say these are our threads. We can store the thread data over here. And we can simply write a map function on top of it, right? So let's say, let's return threads.filter and let's go ahead and add some logic over here. So let's say that if the drop down one dot, rather it's drop down two, the drop down two is select option value. If it's all, we can go ahead and just return everything. Otherwise, if the drop down select option value is, let's say me, I can go ahead and filter only the items which are assigned. So here, let's take only the thread dot assigned and thread dot assigned dot assignee is equal to, and you probably want to reference your own email over here. So you can use the AppSmith logged in variable. So appsmith.user.email. This references to this variable references to the user that is currently logged into the platform. Yeah, if in the other terminal condition, we can simply we want to run anyone whose assigned value, which is the thread dot assigned is equal to undefined. Right. So this is our filter. We click on this. Have a look. So we have threads. We're returning the filter thread.
The variable name is threads for the
On top here.
yeah.
Yeah, it is right. Ah, thank you. Very responsive audience today. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. So with this, we can now check out the fields that are unassigned. We can also filter the ones that are just directly assigned to me. We don't really have any assigned to me right now, and all of them can easily be done right in this interface. Similarly, we probably also want a button that can sort of create a modal so that we can reply to these users. So let's say reply. And on reply of this, let's actually go ahead and drag a modal widget over here. So the modal widget, I'm going to change it to a form so that it can be slightly larger. Let's call this reply to. And over here, we can use a rich text editor, this time in edit mode. And on click of this button, we probably want to go ahead and call a new API to send an email. So we've created an API already to send an email. I'm just going to copy it from Postman. So this is a general body format of the email. And what we can do is take in the message from the rich text editor. So the second rich text editor that we took in. The to field, we can pick it up probably from the thread. And the subject field can also be taken from the thread. This part is slightly convoluted because the thread's data isn't structured really well. So what we can do here is look up the fetch emails dot data. We can take up the message field. We can probably just look at the first message. Let's try to look at the payload and the headers inside the payload. So, okay, the headers has like a lot of different headers over here. And this would be really hard to do if we couldn't write JavaScript in AppSmith. Unfortunately, this makes it a lot easier. So we can just say find. And we can go ahead and find a header where, let's say, header dot name is equal to subject, for example, right? Great. So I think I'm able to find the subject value and I can just take the value directly from it. So now the subject is, okay, AppSmith quick start guide, which is typically the subject that you see from all of our emails. So this kind of makes it really easy to, generate like a send email API. And now what we can do is simply bind our modal to that. Okay, so we have to open our modal as well. Let's call open modal. Right. And on confirm of this, we can go ahead and call send email. If the email sending succeeds, what we can do is also go ahead and close this modal. As well as we can also fetch the ticket. So actually, let's go ahead and fetch the inbox again. So on success, let's fetch the inbox. And on success of the inbox, we can convert this to JavaScript and just simply say close modal here. Yeah. Awesome, cool. And with just that, we were able to actually send out an email really quickly. This is sort of something that would generally have taken us quite a while to build. But with just a few configurations inside AppSmith, dragging a few widgets, configuring a few APIs, and connecting to our database directly from the platform, you're able to build an application fairly quickly. Now that this application is ready, we can simply hit deploy. This application is now ready to be shared with people. And we can also go ahead and hit the share button to invite people to this application right over here. So that must have failed on page load. Okay, this is taking an invalid ID now. We can make sure that this doesn't run on page load and it only runs on click. And what we'll also do is make sure that on list item click, we'll go ahead and call fetch emails so that it's not always running. Fetch tickets is not currently running either. No, fetch tickets is running. Okay, I'm going to comment out the filter for now because I think this is what is causing the problem. Oh, okay, sorry, this was a problem with the list widget. All right. Okay, sorry, yeah, this widget is still in beta, so it still has a few issues with it. But yeah, there, as soon as we start this, it should work out fine. Yeah, there we go. But just like that, we're able to like deploy a simple application. We're able to dig deep into it, and we're also able to like reply and generate emails from here. And you can also always protect the application using authentication. You can invite users with various roles, and you can also make this application public if you so choose to. So yeah, that's pretty much how you can build an application on top of Gmail and Postgres, very quickly. Are there any questions that I missed during this demo?
Uh, Hi, Nikhil. Yes, there are a couple. I'm going to start with the first one. Does the OAuth 2 token time out?
No, it does not. So because we are requesting for a refresh token, so when we edit this data source here, we are explicitly asking for an access type as offline. So this is a refresh token. So even though the access token will time out, the AppSmith backend also gets the refresh token, which it uses to keep refreshing this token. So essentially, for the user, it never times out.
Okay, got it. Second is connecting to Postgres on the cloud. What are the different things to just keep in mind to do that?
Yeah. So I think one of the main things to keep in mind really is to ensure that you have whitelisted the IP. That's one of the real main things. The second is that in case that you are using SSL, it has to. We don't support custom certificates. We only support the default verified ones. So ensure you have that as well. I would say these are largely the two main things to keep in mind.
Then there is one more question about multi-line JS, and then there was another question about writing JS in a bigger area. Uh, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think writing JS in a larger area is one of our most requested features, and it's something that we're actively working on. We will be introducing a full-fledged JS editor where you can write multi-line code out of the box. And that is, I think we've also shared these designs on Discord. If you've missed them, please look at our GitHub issues for the JS editor issue. You will find the Figma designs there, and you can leave us comments and ask for additional features as well. In terms of writing multi-line JS, really the property pane supports single-line JS in most cases over here. The way to kind of get around and write multi-line JS is by creating a self-invoking function. So a self-invoking function is one which is what I was using by declaring a function over here, and then calling this function right after its declaration. So this essentially means that this function is going to immediately run, and inside this function, now you can return something like this, for example. So this is how you can write multi-line JS, where you can define various variables, um, and then kind of like just return them as well. So that's kind of the idea that I was using over here. But we are introducing a JS editor where you will be able to do this without needing to create a self-invoking function.
Then there is a specific question about Gmail API. This is by Vishal. Can we automate any action on email fetched, like marking priority or forwarding it to a specific user on the basis of some rules?
Okay. I think in terms of automation, not really so much. We don't really do background jobs as well in AppSmith, but we can create custom rules at the click of a button. So, for example, you could, let's say, drag a button here and say that hey, on on click of this button, I want to do a couple of things. You can and you can make use of JavaScript for that as well. You can say first I want to call an API to mark priority. Then on success of that, I want to call an API to assign these labels to it. And if it errors out, I want to do something else. If the default UI isn't enough, you can convert this to JavaScript and go ahead and write more conditional code in terms of if dropdown one dot is visible, then go ahead and call uh, this API run directly from here. Otherwise, go and do something else like execute another query. So you can create conditional workflows that are triggered from the UI, but not so much workflows that are triggered as a background job.
All right. Thank you, Nikhil. If there are no more questions, we are just going to end the session here. I'll just wait 30 seconds for any more questions.
I've got maybe one question. Just, I guess it would probably be quite interesting to hear about what stuff you've got coming down the pipeline, like the inline JavaScript editor and stuff like that. I'm just kind of interested, I guess, in that.
So was that a request for our roadmap?
I was just wondering what kind of features and stuff like that you're kind of working on that's probably going to be coming to AppSmith, or anything you're kind of excited about, or that you're working on that, like the JavaScript editor and stuff like that.
Okay. So honestly, so our roadmap, by the way, is public. You can check us out. You can check it out on GitHub, and that should give you an idea. But I'll talk about some of the things that we're really, really excited about. Definitely, the JS editor is number one on our plate right now, because we know how hard it is to write really complex JavaScript inside AppSmith, and it's clearly turned out to be a big use case for us. So that's something that we're very excited to be supporting in the near future. Some of the other changes that you'll see coming up will be a whole expanse of the of the number of widgets that we have on AppSmith. Today we have a good 18-20 widgets, but we're going to work on expanding these a lot. The third big change that you can hope for coming for soon will be in terms of the entire editor building experience. You'll be able to group widgets together, move them around. The grid is going to be more granular. You're going to be able to layer things on top of each other. We're going to have undo and redo. So the overall editing experience of building UI itself is going to undergo an entire metamorphosis and become far, far better. That's another huge project that's coming up. Then I would say that also in terms of the platform, we're really working on simplifying our deployment process. So today we've heard a lot of feedback in terms of the deployment script not being as user-friendly and setting environment variables being quite difficult. So we're going to try and make it a little easier to work with Docker and give a very simple UI so that when you're deploying AppSmith, you can go ahead and configure all of the variables that you require right from inside the project itself. So I'd say these are some of the really exciting things that are coming up in the near future.
So if you're not on our Discord, please join our Discord, because we keep sharing early deploy previews as well as Figma files of anything that's in design. So that's the place where we continuously engage with our users and discuss things that are upcoming. So please definitely join our Discord server. If not Discord, then you can always start and create an issue on GitHub. We accept issues from everybody. So please don't worry about creating an issue that feels too small or you're unsure if it already exists. That's completely fine. Just go ahead and create an issue so that we can start a conversation right there. And our existing issues, of course, you'll notice a lot of our existing users commenting there and requesting for some changes, and we actively work on those changes. So if you find an existing issue that you feel needs to be taken up or needs some improvement, please go ahead and just comment there. We'll get back to you within a few hours and tell you if we can do something about it. And in most cases, we actually end up doing something depending on what people ask us to work on. So I'm not just saying this for the sake of it. We actually do immediately react to our user feedback. Awesome. So thanks Cameron. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to go ahead and end this session. The recording of this session will be available on YouTube. So you can again find the details of every single thing that Nikhil just demonstrated on YouTube. You should see that on our YouTube channel tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. All of you have a great day and take care.
Hey, Nikhil and Abhishek, thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.